order. And the first thing on the agenda today is to approve last meeting's notes.
So I read the meetings.
Okay.
Yeah, I read it. I'm okay with it unless you say something.
I'm in agreement with it
Yeah, nothing stood out to you.
as it was.
Yes.
So I move to approve this.
I second.
All in favor, say aye. And the meetings from June 19th have been approved. Item 2, we were looking to have some discussion on Comcast Counterproposal. Jane, do you have anything to update us with on that?
Yes, I think Nan Winter was not able to come tonight, although she was invited. And so I can give an update. The city sent a counter to Comcast Counterproposal. So you'll remember that this is the way we're counting it. The city submitted both draft ordinances. One is a master ordinance and one is a grant of authority. And Comcast came back with a counter proposal on May 27th. And let's see, we met on May 21st. So actually they countered on May 31st. And so the city negotiating team, which consists of Nan Winter, our lead negotiator, who is a contract attorney with the firm Stelzner and Winter, Walmart Barton. Let's see, Nan, and then Paul Chapman, who is the associate chief information officer, who is one of the managers of the city's Department of Technology and Innovation. And Stephanie Yara, who's the financial analyst for the city council, and David Lucero, who is the manager of GovTV. That's the negotiating team. So we met for 2 hours on 2 days, so 4 hours altogether. And the city's negotiating team attacked or grappled with 3 out of 4 issues that we identified. One is the Consumer Bill of Rights, which is a priority of the board. Second is the PEG access, and the third is the INET. And we discussed all of those and actually came up with a written counter-proposal on the Consumer Bill of Rights. And when we take a break, I'll bring you copies of the counter-proposal. I think that the good news, and I try to be not too extravagant in saying this, but I think the good news is that the city and Comcast will probably reach an agreement or come to an agreement on the Consumer Bill of Rights. I think that the differences are, as it turns out, not that, well, there are some differences, but I think that the differences can be addressed and reconciled. And so it turns out It turns out that the consumer bill of rights that Comcast offered in its counterproposal was based on the Denver consumer bill of rights, because I checked it and Dan checked it. And so you remember that initially Comcast did not propose a consumer bill of rights at all. And so this one incorporates the bill of rights that was adopted in Denver, Colorado. And many of the provisions are the same as in the consumer bill of rights that the city put in its consumer bill of rights. And so some of the big categories are the accessibility of the company through both telephone and the store hours. Now the notice was somewhat deficient in the Comcast version. However, we have discussed some of these notice provisions with Comcast and feel cautiously optimistic that they will accept those notice provisions. The major kind of discrepancy, you would say, between the city's notice and what Comcast has discussed as acceptable is that the city the city's proposal includes a posting of the services and rates effective as of a certain date. And this is what Comcast has agreed to do in Seattle. Apparently, I don't think that they do this in Denver. So that's a pretty important point, and it was included in the city's counterproposal that was just sent yesterday. It wasn't, or sometime, but it was yesterday. So I think it was yesterday or late last week. Let's see, on the billing practices, Comcast is pretty adamant that it will not accept any provision that a increase in the rates more frequently than 1 year is presumptively unreasonable. And the work group discussed that at its meetings, and remember, we met one Friday for 2 hours, and we met the following Monday, additional 2 hours. The sense of the group was that it would be very difficult to get that provision in the consumer bill of rights because no other city really has anything like that.
We would try to set precedent.
Yeah, exactly. And
None that we know.
what's that?
None that we know.
Yeah, well, but on the other hand, the negotiating team wants to move forward, and so it dropped that feeling that probably Comcast would accept the provisions.
So
But we haven't gotten a response yet
okay, so
that I know of.
in essence, they could, I mean, is there anything anywhere, if we drop that particular segment, is there anything in there about a timeliness or an untimeliness about raising rates?
Well, there's a notice of, the notice has to be provided, I think it's 30 days, I don't have it with me, before the rates become effective.
Okay.
So there's that time frame.
Right. However, if they chose to raise rates every 30 days.
All right, so that the tool that the City of Albuquerque and its constituents and consumers, that the tool that we could avail ourselves with in that situation would be Comcast's agreement to abide by the Unfair Trade Practices Act, and hopefully they'll agree to abide by the guides against paid advertising.
Okay. That answered that.
So we left those in, and probably those are controversial. Knock on wood, I don't want to, bring on a battle or lose face or whatever. One place that the city and Comcast probably reached an agreement or compromise agreement is on the reference to the unfair trade practices. So initially, Comcast said that Comcast is not subject to New Mexico state law on unfair trade practices. Of course, I don't agree. In the letter, the lawyer for Comcast said that Comcast does not believe it is subject to the state law because there's an exemption in the state law for transactions that are approved by the federal government. These are, the city team does not agree with that. There is nothing in the ordinance that brings in federally approved transactions. For the most part, and Comcast is somewhat critical about this because they went to Washington and got a determination of effective competition, meaning that the market rules here. And for them to say that these transactions are federally approved flies in the face of what they went to Washington to argue and won, saying that there's effective competition, and in other words, the market governs these transactions. So that if the market governs Comcast's relationship and transactions and contracts with its customers, it's the market that prevails in those transactions, then the government always, whether it's the federal government or state government, always has the right to regulate those through unfair trade practices laws and through the Trade Commission's rules.
Okay.
And so we believe that they are subject, and they're not fighting back really hard on that. And the compromise is that instead of putting the citations to the unfair trade practice law in the New Mexico statutes, we have put in language that Comcast will abide by all applicable trade practice laws without citing.
Very nice.
Yes,
I like
but we
that.
have the paid advertising cited, and let's see, and we have the notice provision cited, specifically cited. So that's the good news on the Consumer Bill of Rights. I think that in my view, and it's just the way you're watching a game, like a soccer game, there's an amount of interpretation there. You're not really sure where the pitch battle is going to be, and I use a metaphor to sports, but I've said a year ago or so that I never use sports metaphors, but I'm using them in this instance. And it must be the influence of ProView. Yay! So we don't really know, but I believe that the big battle will be on the opaque channels and the INET. And so on the INET, I can say that Paul Chapman met with the Comcast representatives at sell business services and talked about, all right, now remember, this is another compromise where the city is working its way back to a position closer to what it proposed. So initially it proposed status quo on the INET, that the Comcast provide the linkages and the backbone and not charge. So, for any of that. And that was just created a property interest when the city and Comcast created that institutional network, or INET, in 2002. So, coming to the table in 2017, Comcast said that it could no longer do this, that it would require payment. And so the compromise is that Comcast initially was requiring or proposing managed service fees. And so the managed service fees are more expensive. They're for services that are probably more questionable. It's hard to tell what you're getting. You know, we have to be our own consumer advocate in this case. And so managed services, I think I've explained in other meetings, cover things like design of the network, scouting out who's going to construct the network, maintenance of the network. You know, a lot of things that are a little bit kind of away from what you know, is like illustrate what exactly you're getting. So the compromise is that Comcast said it would, rather than insisting on a managed services agreement, it would agree to negotiate a dark fiber agreement. Obviously, that's a little more concrete. And so that has to do with leasing access to Comcast dark fiber. And so Paul met with Comcast representatives or their business marketeers to discuss that contract. And they have discussed some aspects of it, but not the price. So we feel that, you know, we still need to, the ball's still in Comcast court. You know, the next topic, and what we're working very hard on right now, is on a counterproposal on the PEC. So, on the PEC channel. So, Comcast is proposing to, quote, reclaim the fourth channel, which is the education channel, and then eliminate the requirements in the ordinance to activate 5 other channels. So they're reclaiming 6.
And that's it, 4.
And now we have 4. What's
You
that?
said they were claiming 4. They were reclaiming.
No, 9. They're 9.
We have 9.
We have 9. And
According to the old.
They were reclaiming 4.
Not
6.
No, actually, they're reclaiming 1 because when you say reclaim, that's the one that's active. And then eliminate. So if there are 9 altogether, and they're reclaiming 1 and then just wiping out the possibility of having any others, then I add up 6, you know, that are at risk.
I have a question, thought, and it kind of goes with item 4, I'm sorry, item 3, in regards to the big channels. And I'm going to kind of jump ahead just a bit in regards to that. How, and have you discovered, have you found out, can you tell us how many applicants have applied for that, for the management of the
No, purchasing will not tell me that information,
and,
so I don't really know.
okay,
But what I do know is that the ad hoc committee is meeting this month to, well, they're supposed to be reviewing them individually, you know, so the ad hoc committee is supposed to be at their homes, their offices, reviewing all the proposals, and that's sometime this month. And there's a date set that just kind of slipped from somebody's mouth, so I won't say exactly, but it is this month. They are going to, the ad hoc committee is getting together to compare their assessments of the different.
okay. here's where I'm going with that. And it might kill two birds with one stone. It may cost the city more money. In that we have 9 channels currently according to the contract that's in place. And we have, we'll say, multiple applicants for those, for the management of the current status of those channels. What I'm suggesting, open for discussion, is what if we brought more than one group to open up those other channels? In other
That
words,
was part of my discussion. That was part of the thing that I wanted to discuss last night.
writer, planning, other, yeah.
So I wish Sandy was here so we could discuss this.
Well, and that's why I'm kind of moving over, because she brought up 10 channels. And if you want to open up and jump in, that's absolutely fine. I want to. But I'm suggesting that if there is a possibility to award more than one applicant for those for the management of those channels, because honestly, I can see where 9 channels would be incredibly difficult for any one of those applicants to be able to manage. And so for us to take all 9 just for the possibility that something might happen to the other ones, just doesn't sit right with me. But if we have multiple groups, meaning 2, 3,
For a second.
absolutely.
I had a meeting with, just a few weeks ago. Before I mentioned it to you, I mentioned it to you first regarding multiple awards. This is what we're
Go ahead.
talking about. Yeah. So I had a meeting with Selena and I mentioned to her that when public access first came into Albuquerque, population at that time was sitting roughly about 3 million. So there was a single award at that time. And this was something that I discussed with Survey. And she didn't agree with me or disagree with me, but this was something that I brought to Jane a few weeks ago, and she said that, well, we might not discuss this again. So I wish you had given me a chance to have some questions. I have some questions for them. I know she's not here. But multiple awards is what we're talking about.
Yep.
And multiple awards is something I brought to Jane a few weeks ago.
Great minds think alike.
So this is something that was my own personal initiative that I brought to the mayor's office. And I said, look, 20-something years ago when the cable access came into existence, there was a single award because at that time population was sitting roughly around 3 or something down. If you look at the timeline, you look at the population. Now we have doubled since then. We have currently 9 channels, with some of them that, and that's why I was asking Ann that question, how many channels are they asking or reclaiming? This is what my question was. And Sandy jumped in and said, well, they're looking, they just wanting to settle. The reason why I was asking was for the multiple awards. Okay, so if the board can discuss this, and I know Sandy's not here, but we needed to discuss this, and I had brought this up to Jane, and Jane didn't want to wait till all the proposals are made. Am I right, Jane?
Right.
Okay, so I wish you gave me a chance to elaborate on that because it feels like I kind of got marginalized by the whole project. Because that was an initiative, something that was done here.
Yeah, no, I didn't intend to, of course, I didn't intend to marginalize you. I think that at the last meeting I didn't understand really what you were.
Well, no, I was referring to multiple awards.
Yeah.
I said, look, the reason why I'm saying that is because Comcast is wanting to reclaim some channels from us.
Yeah.
Now, if we were to convince the city, the mayor's office, and the city council, that look, we can do multiple awards, we instead of just having one one board, we could do multiple boards. Okay, and therefore we could use these other channels. And yes, we would have to allocate funds for these channels separately, now the city's going to run that. Well, how that's going to work out.
I don't see any major obstacle to that way of thinking, because the city, through the city process, so the way this worked was the legal department drafted the request for proposal, and then it went to the purchasing department to kind of review it and all that. And I'll tell you.
Again, I'm sorry, I don't mean to, I apologize if I'm being, because this is something that kind of meant a lot to me at that time, when I brought this up to you. And the reason why I'm saying that, before all the contracts were submitted, since I went and spoke to Surveyor about this, I said, look, this is the reason why I'm bringing this up is because there's always going to be a fight. If we award it to one person, there's always going to be an issue with the other side. Therefore, we have some channels, and that's why I was asking you, how many channels do we have accessible, and how many are we currently reclaiming? And she said 4. Okay. So here, this is what my initiative was at that time. I said, look, let's have a discussion in the board as far as multiple awards. And at that time, I felt like you asked me not to bring this up, and I wasn't sure why I was asked not to bring that up.
Well,
But just on the record,
okay.
I needed to make sure that
I think that you're misunderstanding something, because I never discouraged discussion of multiple awards, because the legal department, not recommended, but wrote into the RFP the possibility of multiple
of course it's
awards.
there. You can see it clear as day.
When that was not a possibility under the old RFP. So the
And you
RFP
can
that
see
went out
currently it's there. It's there now. It's currently there. So the possibility of multiple awards, the city could or might consider. Now, if the board made that recommendation, had it been that it was made in a timely fashion, this was several weeks ago that I mentioned to you, and I felt like I was kind of asked not to bring that up, and I understand your point about, because all the RFPs weren't in at that time, and we could kind of create a cluster of it. I do understand that part of it, but this was something that I needed to bring up in a timely fashion. That way, if there was any decisions that were made by the ad hoc committee, they could be considering such a thing. So now we are eliminating that possibility, because I felt like I was kind of like, okay, well, let's not bring this up in the next meeting or the meeting, because we don't know how many people are.
Well, I would say offhand that, and I'm in agreement with Paul. I like your idea, and I certainly agree with it, and I really believe Sandy would too, but I can't speak for her.
Yeah, we can't speak for her. And she was here, so.
Right, and so I think we brought it up. I think we need, will the ad hoc meet before we meet again?
Yes.
Do you think they'll make a decision at that meeting?
I don't know, but if the board wishes to do a resolution recommending multiple awards, we can.
See, I wanted to ask this question the two meetings ago, when you said, well, let's not bring this up right now, we don't know how many proposals are being submitted. So I said, okay, let me wait for a little bit. But I feel like now it's after the fact, because now I feel like it's too late to bring that up. Because the city actually can actually award more than one award, because there isn't a need for it, because the population is doubled to over 600,000. Okay, so that if I'm going back, and if I'm going back to that point, the reason why I didn't brought it up, the multiple award, because I saw it now, I said, oh, this is something the city might be looking at. And then that's why I took it to the mayor's office, and she didn't agree with me or disagree with me. But I let her know, this is something that I want to bring up in front of the board, and then we can And you might want to consider this, you know, and talk to the mayor. And we could, you know, if we have to, we could, you know, write up a resolution and take it to, you know, the city council. So, but I feel like at this point, we're kind of delayed on that. This is why I'm feeling aggravated by that, because I feel like it's kind of delayed now. So I was like, okay, but don't talk about this now, because we need to.
All right, so the first time I said we should put off the discussion, it had to do with the proposals not being in yet. Now, the second time that the meeting last time went very late, and when you were talking with me across the table, I didn't really realize what you were talking about. And so I don't control these meetings, it's up to the chair and to all of you. But having said all that, I think that we could still fix the situation by preparing a resolution.
And we need to act on this now, because I feel that, you know, this is something that, you know, if the ad hoc committee is meeting next week or whatever their date is, and we don't know, I feel like we're kind of running behind on this thing, because they would have had time to digest this thing and say, okay, what we're suggesting this thing, let's talk amongst themselves. And they're the deciding factor, they're the screeners there. And I needed to bring that to them. I went to the mayor's office, spoke to Serena because of that, because I felt like we're running behind here. And multiple boards is something that I wanted to suggest this go around, because I know that's the future. One single entity should not be handling one of these channels, because it's too much for them. And then there's funds that are allocated that are not being distributed properly. So there's a multitude of issues there. So this thing, at this point, we need to act on this thing, have some sort of a resolution.
Right.
I don't know if we can do it this time or next time, but I understand it was also she could give us time.
If you have the ear to the ad hoc committee, if they have your ear, whatever, and that they would hold off on the decision until we can have a resolution and recommend, just as Giovanni and myself were both discussing here, because I am so like-minded in that same idea. And if we tried, I mean, it would be nice if you could start a resolution, draft a resolution for us. And just as Giovanni's kind of alluding to, but if they were to pick a candidate or even candidates, which I would hope they would do, that we feel like it might be too late. So is there ad hoc committee, is that a closed meeting?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely, yes. It is a closed meeting, and to respond to one of your questions, and what you just said, I do not have any communication with the ad hoc committee. You know, as a person that works in city government, I'm a lawyer that works in city government, and so I provide legal advice and sometimes policy advice to my clients. But I don't make those kinds of decisions. And as far as the procurement process goes, that is, the people that I've talked to in the government view that process as pretty closed. It is not amenable, or it's not subject to a lot of input from other sources. And there is a community member on the ad hoc committee Other than that, they're not really open to a lot of input from outside sources, and they feel that in order for the process to be fair, that it has to be closed and, within the group itself. I think that the cable board can make its opinion known to both the mayor's office, which you've already done, and to city council. But it is not necessarily possible to get input in front of the ad hoc committee just from, and this is not necessarily in the procurement laws of the state of New Mexico or in the ordinance, procurement ordinance, but this is how purchasing department views the process. That this is the reason they won't tell me how many proposals they received. And so that kind of barrier actually works both ways. So they don't want to give information, and they don't want to receive information. Having said that, I am staff of this cable board, and as staff of the cable board, it's our job to provide support as much as possible. And I'm willing, of course, to prepare a resolution that says the multiple awards. I'm looking at the calendar. One way to do it is to prepare it on a break right now. Another way of doing it is to prepare it, like tomorrow or next day, and then set up a meeting. As long as it's 72 hours, 72 hours notice, and that we just call another meeting in order for you all to sign that, and then we will get it to the ad hoc committee.
I just kind of feel at this point that we're behind. I feel like I'm just looking at it. I wish I was able to articulate this thing and voice my opinion a few 2 meetings ago. And I felt like at that point, you gave me that advice to hold on, but I feel like, at no offense, Jim, I feel like I was wrong. I really needed to bring that out. And I felt like you said, no, let's not bring this up. I could have at the very least bring it up to the board, we could have discussed this thing. That way, the ad hoc committee at this point would have known that there is a school of thought there that's saying, let's do multiple rather than single. Let's see what they're saying. So a resolution would have provided that. And now I feel like we're set behind now. And if we could do a resolution now, I would be all for it. I would be for a special meeting just so we can get this in their hands.
I agree. Let's proceed forward with resolution. It is 20 after 6. Well, let's do this real quick. I think, Giovanni, that to give Sandy an opportunity to be a part of this resolution process, that a special meeting might be appropriate at this time, and that there was a reason we couldn't do it on, or was there on the 17th. And the ad hoc is meeting when?
You don't know.
18th.
You don't know.
Someone told me the 18th.
Okay, that's a little late.
That was told to me informally.
What if we were to look at Monday the 16th as a special meeting that would give us certainly 72 hours, time for you to draft that resolution and for us to review it, and then act on it. And if that was the only agenda item for the 16th, it would be meet and move on that particular item. So how do you feel about the 16th?
I think the 16th should work.
Are you available on the 16th? Danielle, are you available on the 16th?
So, well, it sounds like it's a priority of the board, so of course the staff will make the meeting happen.
So basically, I would move this and so for discussion on the resolution. If you second that, then basically.
Okay.
Sandy's not here.
So, yeah, okay.
So I move we have a discussion on the resolution regarding multiple.
Okay, we can certainly do that. I don't think we need to have an approval on the discussion as it's already there. So why don't we move forward and make some decision on what the resolution should contain? Is that what you're wanting to discuss? Okay. Let's go. You have the floor.
So that was my initial proposal that I wanted to bring to the board for discussion. That was several weeks ago, maybe 2 meetings ago. And the reason why I wanted to propose it is because I studied this thing since the last go around, which is 2012. I said, this is always going to be an issue. There's plenty of individuals that can, have multiple awards and still serve the community. I feel at this point the community has grown to a point where it can accommodate multiple awards. And I think the city needs to understand this. Singular award means you're also going to upset someone else. Okay, there's numerous individuals that are very interested and very dedicated to public access and everything. So, and then at that point, you're not silencing them. This was my initial thought that I actually took to the mayor's office and I said, you all appointed me, this is where I would like to see that. And whether you like it or don't like it, or she didn't have an opinion on it. Ms. Rita did not have an opinion on either of it. She said, I don't like it, I like it. She just listened to it. And the reason why I did that is because I knew I was going to bring this up for a discussion. And I feel at this point, that we need to move on this thing and expedite this thing so that we can have this thing from the ad hoc committee. So they can have at least a resolution there and say, okay, the board came up with this. Let's see how this thing works out and see if it is feasible for the city. It may not be feasible. I don't know how the funds are allocated, how the multiple awards will work in the long term. But when you look at it from a common sense point of view, I think it's very necessary we actually digging it up at this point. Because that's the future, whether we like it or not.
So what points would you like to see inside that resolution? The fact that the city has outgrown.
Well, the city has doubled since the very first channel, cable access was around.
Right, back in Jones Intercable.
Correct.
And so the fact that the city has grown to a size that a single entity could not manage 9 channels. So multiple management for those channels is common sense. I think that with that many with as many applicants as we have, it would be easy to award, because as far as our public comment has been, we have a lot of creative people that could easily come up with, we don't want to do 3 education channels or 4 government channels. You just can't fill it. But you might be able to fill a channel for health and wellness. You might be able to fill a channel for how-to. You might be able to fill a channel with items that the public want to see that they're going to YouTube for now, but we could put it on a channel, which would benefit Comcast greatly, and it would benefit us greatly at the same point.
Mr. Chair, the reason why initially, and I asked them that question, how many channels are we wanting? And what was their reason for wanting? Well, they're not using it.
Right.
You see, therefore, now this way, you can justify usage.
Right. Absolutely.
And you can, when negotiators are talking to Comcast, they can actually bring up the fact that there will be multiple owners and that we are going to be using these channels.
Yes.
And we do not want to get them back.
Right. And just exactly, it's a win-win situation for us as we keep the 9 channels and we get a group of really talented people managing multiple groups of channels, if you will. And it's all a win-win.
It actually, that specific diversification of the channels, it means that the city at that point is at peace.
Yeah.
Because you're always going to silence someone, especially if they really want, you public was awarded the access, the others, quote unquote, was upset. And I work with both of these guys, and I like both of them, and I dislike both of them. Okay, with certain traits, I'm speaking, not this, and I'm speaking in a general sense. But there's things that, the point of the multiple awards is so we can have diverse cable access and educational channels. And I think it heals the city in many ways.
I agree.
It heals in many ways. And at that point, there's no one else filing lawsuits. They're saying, well, you know,
Well, that can still happen a lot, so
it's up to them.
Yeah.
So I'm saying, okay, we have X amount of channels, let's distribute them properly.
Yeah.
That way everyone's voice is heard.
Yeah.
And no one is silenced about it.
I agree with that wholeheartedly.
So,
I believe you and I are in agreement.
So I wish Sandy was here. So we need that meeting, so we can discuss that.
So,
Have a discussion.
I move to have a special meeting on July 16th, Monday, at 5:30 in whatever room is available.
And that would be the previous question.
To address, we can meet in the hallway if they want, I don't know. But to address the resolution. Now, it is also my understanding that, and Giovanni, I don't know that our resolution will hit the ad hoc committee. It will go to the mayor's office and to the council, but we don't have a path to the ad hoc committee, do we?
Well, I can talk with the Sarita mayor, the CAO, about sharing the resolution to the ad hoc committee. Remember that whether whether the board submitted this resolution, a month ago or now, you still have that issue of whether this resolution will be considered by the ad hoc committee. However, I know of no legal bar of presenting this resolution to the purchasing department. The purchasing department is the department that is in charge of administering and implementing the ad hoc committee. They're the ones that provide the staff support for the ad hoc committee. So I think that I would probably tell the mayor's office that I'm providing a copy of this resolution to the purchasing department to provide to the ad hoc committee. And I think that it will be timely.
Okay. Well, that's the most important thing, that we are under the government.
As I understand it, the ad hoc committee, and I'm probably saying too much in this in a public forum. So I'm not going to comment on it, but I believe that they have not deliberated yet on the proposal.
Okay.
So at this point, if we were to have a resolution, do you think they'd be able to see it prior to the meeting?
Before they deliberate on it as a group, yes.
Wonderful.
So what you're saying is not too late?
It's not too late.
Okay.
Okay.
Because I can always go back to the mayor's office and we can break this down. And she will recall, if you speak to her, she will recall precisely that topic. I'm here to discuss this specific thing. That's very clear to me.
Okay,
So if we need to, we can go that route, but I don't feel like I need to at this point. I think the resolution should suffice.
I agree. So, do we need a motion for that special meeting? I mean, I move that we,
Just
yeah, but
getting in the room.
give me a second, the motion on the meeting.
17.
Yeah, on the 16th, Monday the 16th.
Oh, 16. Yeah, so 16.
Yeah.
16. I second the motion.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, having a special meeting on Monday the 16th has been approved. And moving forward, and that is to the, at this point, the only agenda item on that meeting shall be the discussion and review of a draft that Jane, of the resolution that Jane will put together for us in regards to the multiple awards for the pay channels. Okay, we kind of jumped all over here. Is it necessary to discuss the first item under public access, which was the appraised value of the public access channels? How do you feel about that? Yeah. It's almost a moot point if we use them, if we use and get the resolution set up. That's all I
I
feel.
would agree that to be some more time.
Okay, let's move down the road to number 4, discussion on net neutrality, and that is Jane has put together a very nice resolution here that mimics the contract that is trying to be worked out with Comcast right now, and that I'm in favor of. Is there any discussion on the resolution?
I don't have the discussion, I just needed to see if there was a speaker or something.
On net neutrality? Right, and we'll get to that in just a minute, if we move forward on a seminar, conference, meeting specifically for net neutrality. I move that we approve the resolution with the only proviso that we adjust the verbiage under DII. It would be line 16. And that we simplify that
And how are we going to replace that?
To replace it with normal speak in a way that they would be, Jane, how did you put it? Just that they were
Content
providers.
providers.
Yeah, content providers. Yeah, thank you. Again, I think this, we could address this with the, and as I continue to move Sandy's name up on the page, the bottom of page 2, so adjusting space, so that it's a 2-page resolution as opposed to Sandy being alone on page 3 there.
Should we fix it?
Yeah.
I hope.
Word can do that.
Yeah. I hope.
Okay.
She's on the third page.
With those 2 provisions, the change in edge to content and moving Sandy's name up, do I have a second?
Second motion.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The resolution is adopted and approved with those changes. And we could sign the changes and the adoption next week, as right after we discuss the pig channels and the multiple award resolution. Okay, shall we move forward with the second item, number 4, which is possible presenters on net neutrality for a net neutrality meeting here for the public. Do you have, were you able to get a hold of anybody that could commit to something like that?
So far, we have some interest from a professor at UNM who is an associate professor and chair of the IT computer science department. His name is Jedediah Crandall. And so I came across his name because I was searching law school web pages for law professors that are interested in net neutrality, and his name came up because he has been interviewed on KOAT TV when there was a kind of a demonstration by people in support of net neutrality and opposed to the actions that were imminent from the FCC back in December. And so he said that he is definitely interested in helping and let me know what I can do. And so I wrote back and I asked if he were available to present a 15 to 30 minute talk on net neutrality in August. And so I left that open because that's up to you all on the board to decide. I also talked with Joseph Yar, who is an assistant AG, and he represents the Attorney General at the Public Regulation Commission and generally on issues involving telecommunications and utilities. And of course the Attorney General Valdez joined with about 22 other AGs in suing the FCC on the order that came out in December where the FCC repealed the net neutrality rules that the previous FCC had enacted. And I asked Joseph if someone from the AG's office or he or someone else from the AG's office could come to a committee workshop to discuss that lawsuit, and he's he said that he would have to talk with his supervisor, but I'm fairly confident that the AG would want to share the information about that lawsuit because they were part of it. And so I think that someone from the AG's office is by Skype or something along those lines. So that is what I've found out so far.
Okay, it'd be interesting to, even if it were recorded, to have anybody from the FCC giving a statement as to why they made the ruling and changed the way the internet was looked at. I don't know if that's possible, but even if they were to record a message for us, brief would be best. But it's a big topic, and the public would love to know why. I don't know.
One suggestion that I have is to prepare a tape from that hearing, because all the commissioners made statements about why they voted against it or for it. And we can probably prepare a tape.
Yeah.
Because that's public record.
Sure. That would be, yeah, utilizing that would be great. So we should certainly share for interesting debate there if we have some. Okay. Any more discussion in regards to the presenters or the workshop?
No, I don't. I needed to back up actually a little bit.
Okay.
Jim, we had discussed prior meeting regarding state media on the application. And we actually did we propose a resolution on that, or I'm not sure whether the purchasing department was able to accept that. How does that work? What's the update on that? Because we're not hearing anything as far as, was it accepted, not accepted? Your application?
It was in the minutes, and I believe
Was it accepted? I mean,
they were able to, if I'm not mistaken,
they received it.
Right. The minutes of the meeting were taken to the, what's the
City clerks.
city clerk? Okay.
But I have to clarify that the staff, we do not take the minutes until they've been signed and approved. So we will do that tomorrow.
Okay.
So at the next meeting, we should have some sort of update, because we discussed that.
Right. Unfortunately, the issue is, if I'm not mistaken, that we don't know anything about the procurement. And we don't know how many, we don't know who's been accepted, who hasn't been accepted, and we won't. Is that my understanding?
When I have sought that information, I have not been able to get it because I've been told that it's not public information, but I can try again.
But do you understand the nature of my question? I'm trying to see if there's an update as far as their application being accepted, that they were turned on. You were late. Your application is basically at this point not going to be in the mix. So we actually discussed this and made a move. And the second day it was passed, right? That this recommendation will go to the procurement department and they will consider that application as being valid. I just need to know the update.
We're going to submit it tomorrow with the signature on the minutes. And then on Monday, I can let you know what kind of reaction I got. I can't if I understand Chairman White correctly, I agree with that I cannot promise you that the ad hoc committee or the purchasing department on behalf of the ad hoc committee will tell me this is the way the ad hoc committee believes, or this is the ad hoc committee's position on the issue. I cannot promise that.
I just wanted to know an update on whether, how we can say, I understand that the minutes were signed, so we will get to them.
Yes.
I just need to know whether their application was accepted or whether it's still in that same status of your link.
So you're right, and so I get it. And so we just approved these minutes.
Okay, so now I think,
Right.
so I'm just kind of jumping in.
Right, no,
So-
no, I got it. No
I
problem.
apologize for that, I didn't mean to jump ahead.
So, yeah, so that's why you're sending that down now, because now that's sort of
Yes.
10-4. Okay.
And I will try and get a response because, there's people involved and I'll see what they say and what I can be authorized. And, there's a balance. I started to say that, I'm a lawyer, I take direction from the clients, but I do provide advice. And sometimes I'll say things like, this is a public body that is involved with these issues and they have asked for this information. And I'm trying to get this for them. And I'll tell you, I'll say that. Right? And so I have no problem, but I don't know saying that, but I don't know how they're going to respond to me.
Sure. Okay. Good.
I think
I think so too.
we can move on.
Okay. Item 5, the board's webpage. Do you know if anything's come about, Jane, in regards to the third-party speed tester for the websites?
Right, so I talked with Matt Mays, who is the digital engagement worker for the city. And he actually talked with his supervisor, Brian Ostowo. And I explained the cable board's interest in a third-party speed test. The gist of what they told me is that they can definitely post a speed test type of application on the cable board's web pages, but they would prefer the cable board choose the application, and that it would probably be better to choose one that does not charge a fee, so that the city is not in a position of promoting one commercial entity and its activities over another.
And I see I know where they're coming from. What if we were to take, and I'm quite sure there's more than one free third party, and just place, and here is a list of third party speed testers, so that we are not doing that. And if the board were to recommend one, then it would be the board saying this is a legitimate. And I don't know that I would. I'm pretty internet savvy, but it's just a question of what would be safe for the city to put on there, because anymore there's so much links to not appropriate material out there, or phishing, or you name it. And so it would be, if we came up with a list of third-party free testers, and they could, and the IT group could test those and make sure they were safe, and then take that list of whatever they deemed safe and add those links to the website. Did you get that? Did you get that? I rambled, I'm sorry. Okay, so that's my recommendation. Is there any other discussion? I know your son had one right there and then. If you could get his recommendations and send them James' way, that'd be great.
I personally think Comcast resist that. I mean, I'm thinking they could actually do this in an easy way, but it's not in their interest to do that because it's always lagging. It's never efficient. And, every time I spoke to someone, they always complain about it.
Correct.
They promise them X amount of megabytes and then you get X amount. It's always low. And so this is not something that's in the interest of Comcast. And I will push this thing as hard as we could for something like, as far as the speed. But I feel like, if they could resist, they would.
Okay.
There's other things that are more important than something like that.
Right.
We could ask them rather than hang ourselves on this one and say, okay, well, you got to give us the speed. I would be more inclined to asking them as far as, giving senior citizens discounts and things like that, so, or low-income families, rather than push them on something like this.
Right, and this isn't, I don't think this is a push or shove. I think this is just our giving the public information, and for them, the public, to utilize that to come back to us as things get settled down with the contract. They come to us on our meetings and say, hey, I'm here to tell you that I used one of those speed tests, and then I used Comcast, and they said I had this, and the third party speed test said I'm getting not that, and so I just want to bring that to the board, and that's the whole ideal of that, not to be a push shove for the contract. That I don't see that as a push shove for the contract.
If it's something mild, I wouldn't disagree with it, but I strongly feel that this would be a sore subject for Comcast, because they could not deliver whatever it is that they're doing.
Well, and that's their business. They've got to adhere to the rules. If they say I'm supposed to get 25 megabytes download, they better give me 25. Okay, so that would be my recommendation. In fact, we could even add Comcast's own site, because it's so hard to find, on that list of third party, so that people can do their own determination. All right, it's time. Let's move to public comment, and okay, let's start with Adam. Come on down.
It's right here, good.
Yeah, that microphone is on too.
Okay. You guys hear me good? All right. First off, appreciate the committee members, all the information tonight, and for allowing us to speak at a deal with Pro V Sports Network. A couple things I'll update you guys, because we talked briefly a little bit about an AC problem, obviously, that we had at 519 Central, where we reside as subcontractors. Still no solution, but well, I guess there is a solution coming Saturday. They'll begin the AC process of installing a new AC, which is, I think, a pretty difficult process. So I don't know exactly when things will be up, but we'll be there to make sure, 7 a.m. on Saturday, to make sure the process is started. So we do appreciate your diligence. We appreciate you guys understanding. We want to reemphasize, I guess, the importance of everything and why it means so much to us, because we've kind of been out of commission as a business in what we do. As subcontractors on the contract currently, we are not paid a dime, not by the city, not by the current contract owners. So the current contract owners, obviously you public, to them it's like, okay, well, we're still getting our paycheck. But to me and Steve, we're down, we're losing money every single day of our own money. Now, to us, it might not matter, but to our employee staff, that we have way less work I mean, because we're supposed to be contracted for 45 hours of original content a week. That's a lot of hours. That's a lot of manpower, cameramen, contracted operators, directors that we pay that rely on our work for their paycheck, basically. And so it's a lot of downtime. It's really affecting things. That being said, I was really curious, and I know you probably don't have answers, Jane, especially if that ad hoc meeting potentially could be the 18th, but we were curious if there is any time frame on when there might be an award, because it affects the way we plan for business. As residing in 519, as not getting a current check right now, Steve and I are kind of in a what are we doing shuffle right now. So if there's any information or any time frame that everybody can get collectively that has bid on this process, I think it would be very fair. Regardless if it's 3 months, next month, tomorrow, any kind of certainty that we can get to start planning for future would be very important. That also being said, you guys have brought up maybe potentially splitting contracts, multiple award winners. Giovanni, I'll agree with you on multiple award winners undoubtedly, as long as other channels were being used and more allocation and funding were to come. If you take the current contract that everyone just bidded on, I don't know if that's very possible or feasible with the current budget that's there, especially with the situation of having to have a media resource center and who's residing equipment, who's in charge of it. You know, all of these things come into play. The contract, if you read the whole thing, very, very tricky. If you get other channels, absolutely. There should be many award winners and more funding, and that's pretty necessary, I think, for the size of our community. I will agree with that, especially since there are channels now. I don't know, I know you're negotiating with that right now, Jay, but I would agree with that, Giovanni, if that were the case. If it's a current contract, it's very difficult. The current resources that it has, and the budget that it has, and all of them tied into one hub end, very difficult. That being said, the winner should be responsible for using multiple resources as far as directors, producers from all, I would say, entities from educational to whatever. So I will speak up saying the current contract holder maybe doesn't do that so well. So if you're going to provide limited resources, you need to have multiple companies, multiple bidders maybe, providing a lot of production for those channels. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Ron. I just have a quick question for you, and thank you for your comments. Is your server still down?
Yes, so we are up, but we can't produce anything inside the studio. So our channel, Comcast 26, our responsibility of that channel is up. But producing new content is, we can only produce new content if it's away from basically the studio. Because the studio, you can't reside there, because if it's over 90 degrees, you can't turn on the equipment. It'll malfunction and what have you. So, for example, we do live events like, you know, the Gladiators Championship game, like we did that. We're able to broadcast live events, soul soccer, stuff like that, or city events that we plan, but it has to be away from the studio. So getting 40 hours of original content is still very difficult. 45 hours, sorry, that's the current contract.
Thank you.
Quick correction, I apologize for interrupting. The server's in and out, so it's still, we're still up and down. Just a correction.
One or two rules
I can talk with Department of Municipal Development. They have a facilities unit, and also the property division has a facilities unit, or property management unit. I could talk with them about getting portable, AC units for the rest of this week. But when that crew shows up on Saturday, it will be installed and working. Saturday. So it's a 10-ton unit and it requires a crane and it requires the street to be closed.
And that's what they're fixing on Saturday.
Yes,
They're putting a brand new unit.
yes. For the building.
Right.
For the first floor, and so there's another unit on the central part of the roof that cools the other parts of the building where construction is not going on. So, and that's already been fixed, by the way, but that doesn't help the production crew because that's just cooling the office part. So this unit that's going to be replaced on Saturday will be the unit that will cool the first floor where the production takes place. But I will talk with them about, because the city may have those units on hand, you know. It's a big operation, so, and thank you for the idea.
Certainly help. All right, Laura, would you like to step up to the lake?
So I, once again, can't say enough about how much I value what you guys are doing. Jane, if the net neutrality thing goes through, I think we need to hold a massive party for you because you do so much darn work behind the scenes for free speech in the city that nobody knows about. And if that goes through, seriously, you're invited to a big party we put on for you. And I'm not trying to call favor, I'm just, people need to understand how much stuff you do without anybody knowing. It is lots of work. What I would like to speak to is there's two monsters here. One is how you actually physically run a public access station. And I understand what you're talking about, which is we are sitting on a multi-million-dollar resource, which is cable bandwidth. I would like to pass this to you folks. I'm so sorry I was running late, my dog got sick. So what this is the article speaking nationally to the valuation of unused bandwidth. And it's huge, and it's considered a very limited resource. The reason, if you want to do more research, just look up the search term cable cabal. I'm not making this up. Go online and look up cable cabal, and it will tell you the big 5 cable companies, how limited the resources are, how vigorously they are fighting to co-opt them. And one of the things I learned in my research from this, and why it's so important to you holding on to these channels or not holding on to them, you can say what you want about the 9 channels. If they're not being used or they're not being used correctly, and by that I mean by national standards about public access, not just, oh, we gave it to them because they said they'll put on a basketball show. There are stringent national requirements for public access. Running 1 channel, national requirements is around 80 to 100 hours per week. Quote-unquote was managing about 150. And that requires a vast percentage of it be that it's the first time you've put it on, meaning you can't keep rerunning it, and that it has to originate from the local community. 1 channel is exhausting the resources of this entire community. Yes, it's expanding, but that expansion is not people who know how to put on programming, who are willing to take on the training. Is the bidder going to have the infrastructure to train them? My suspicion is it's going to end up being one organization that trains everybody because nobody else knows what they're doing. And I would argue to you folks, this is wonderful to make all these statements. I think you need to go and actually be forced to go through the entire start to finish training process of what's required to get 1 show on time in a 1-week deadline with what you have to do, and then expand that 150 times, and that will tell you how much work is going to go into complying nationally with the requirements. So it's a wonderful pie-in-the-sky thing that we can hang on to these 9 channels and come up with 9 competitors. You guys don't have the budget. You didn't even have the budget to give proper funding to the 2 channels. You have to remember, the highest level people at that station who are running everything were getting sometimes less than $50,000 a year. A corporate head at a major television station 24/7 is getting $30, $40, $50 million. So we're talking a minuscule budget that then if you try to span that across 9 channels, means nobody's content is going to be met. I understand what you're saying, and I understand the idealism, I understand the purpose of hanging onto the channels. My bigger argument would be, those are public airwaves. Comcast does not own them. They are giant bowling machines that are going in and stealing them from people, but they don't belong to them. If the city just digs in its heels, used or unused, that belongs to the public, not Comcast. And so what's in with those documents, among other things, is a discussion of the timeline when the city was first going behind closed doors to sell off the bandwidth, just so you know, which is why I got involved. I found out of those 9 channels, your legal team was going behind closed doors to talk to Comcast about selling 6 of the channels for $250,000. I had just come from the Bay Area, where they were going through the same battle there and did some research and found out just 1 channel was going for $3 million. So your legal department was trying to sell off 6 channels that at the time were valued at $3 million apiece behind closed doors for $250,000. Second question that was begged that got me really involved is, why 6 channels? At the time, there were only 5 available. So there was a plan from the very start with the previous administration to not only get rid of the folks running the channels, but to sell off as many of them as they could. And that I have vigorous amounts of documentation on. So what that brings us back to is, yes, it would be nice to hang on to those 9 channels. I can tell you, and you can read in those documents, how utterly ruthless the cable cabal is. Comcast intends to eat you alive. And they've got billions of dollars to fight you. So you can give those contracts to people. My fear is you're going to have to spread the budget so paper thin, none of the contract requirements can be met, and Comcast can swoop in, as they've done all through California, claim that they're not being met, and take back the bandwidth. So you're running a serious risk right now. My recommendation would be to get the market value of the existing unused channels and get them to pay up big time to the city. And the market value is very huge right now because there's less and less bandwidth for them. They are freaking out. That's why they are disappearing public access, because it was the last bit of real estate that they perceived as, quote, unused, which I've seen in their documents. They call public access bandwidth in their gleeful, we just sold for $3 billion documents to the public, unused bandwidth. One of the stations in LA that was unused bandwidth had 300,000 followers. Those folks came to their station and the door was locked and the building was shuttered because Comcast had gone behind closed doors and sold off the bandwidth without any of the station knowing, and then called it unused bandwidth in their propaganda. So you're dealing with a giant monster here. And if you don't move forward strategically and intelligently, you're going to lose everything, is my fear. Because if you can't meet content requirements for 2 channels, because you barely have enough money coming for your subscribers to even pay for bare bones skeletal staff, and then you've got 6 other, or 7 other, that maybe they produce 1 show here and there, the requirements per station are going to be at least 80 hours per week. And I challenge any one of you, including you as a producer, to get that much content out there for 9 channels. It ain't gonna happen, and Comcast is gonna leap on that, and they're gonna try to take the whole thing. So you're stepping into really dangerous territory here that you really need to think about. I would say the greater way to do it is to argue the free speech and public airwaves aspect of it. They have no right to take it. There's no ownership for them. They do it if you agree. But that's you not knowing any better. If you dig in your heels and say, this is public airwaves, it belongs to the people, we will allocate it howsoever we want to allocate it, and if they want to try and take it, which they will try to do your research, find out the millions, if not potentially billions of dollars that they could possibly be worth at this point, and give that revenue back to the city and the public access stations. But I don't think you understand how massive this is. I'm giving you the tiniest iceberg tip of documentation about the ruthlessness of the cable cabal. They are eating stations alive as I'm standing here right now. And this little tiny group here was one of the few in the country that is still standing from this. If a station in LA with 300,000 followers was toppled by this, you're talking to some very fierce people. And it's because we understand as a community both the value of free speech, the incredible history of public access in this city, and also that these bandwidths belong to us. And when you dig in your heels and you throw that back at them, you change the landscape. But I am terribly, terribly afraid. I keep seeing over and over again the Rick Metzes of the world who think, oh, we can just have a station. The national regulations require at least 80 to 100 hours per week, per channel, most of it first time you've ever seen it, and originating from your community. I can't even imagine that we have, even if we involve every film company in the state, that you could produce that much content. For 9 channels, it's pie in the sky. It's coming from a good place. You have utterly no concept of what it takes to run a full-time TV station and comply with the rules, and I guarantee you Comcast is going to leap on that. Nothing would make them happier than you guys setting up some contractual thing with 9 contractors who can't meet any of the requirements because A, the budget's too tiny, and B, they have no idea what they're doing. And then Comcast can sweep in like they did in LA and say, oh, they're not meeting the requirements, we're taking them back. So this needs way more debate.
Thank you.
Well, I have a little more to talk about, which is,
Can we keep it
Yeah.
brief?
I just would like you folks to be as clear as possible with the city in terms of parameters of what constitutes, as Jane was saying, the ad hoc committee's privacy versus what constitutes bidders with the complexities of having to deliver massive amounts of media content without any budget and meeting contractual requirements and having no idea when or where. That to me seems like that's no longer an ad hoc committee privacy. That's pure contractual requirements. The city is being given money to allocate and not giving any information about how, when, where, why, who. And no way can the ad hoc committee plead privacy on that, because it's not their money, it belongs to us. We need to know where it's going, we need to know when it's going, we need to know who's bidding on it. That's absolutely, I think you need to take a little harder stand with that, because that's not true. This belongs to us and we have a right to know. I mean, just for these folks, if they're going to be part of the bid, they need to start prepping infrastructure. If there's a possibility they can get involved, there needs to be a massive amount of community infrastructure built into that. TV stations are massive projects involving massive amounts of people. You can't just, I'm not going to give you a birthday cake. I'm going to give you huge amounts of content involving hundreds if not thousands of people. If the city can't be decent and give that information, then they are not answering to the public funds and the public that is paying into those funds. So I would like to see a little more cojones, and I don't mean that disrespectfully. I'm saying we're fighting a monster here of disinformation or no information. And I don't think the ad hoc committee has the right to dictate privacy as a reason to not let people know whether someone has made it into the bid or not. Because people need the right to prepare if they are in the running. Otherwise, it's an unfair situation. There's an unfair advantage amongst competitors. So we need to know from the start gate how many people are running with that.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, I'm over talking, but I just, this matters.
I
appreciate your
passion. Thank you. Colleen. I see that smile back there. Come on up. Yeah. Can you be succinct?
I will, yes, I will.
Thank you.
Let's see, I'm always amazed by Laura. But again, I thank you for all your work and your passion for supporting freedom of speech as well. I do want to add on that Comcast Cable, they have no qualms about breaking the rules because back when I was an employee and we were trying to support some legislation at the federal level, Steve Ranieri, as executive director, was not receiving emails even though he was in phone communication with other public access stations around the country. And so we had to actually get our internet service provider, we had Southwest Cyberport who works with us. They looked into it for us, and due to their technical skills, we found out that Comcast Cable was actually preventing emails regarding this legislation from going to Steve Ranieri's email. So he actually had to end up faxing that information. And then at that point, at the national level, when they were discussing it and they were going to have a vote, our state representative, Heather Wilson, was actually in support of some of the things that were going on, and this was regarding public access. I can't remember the exact details. When she went to lunch, all of a sudden they called a meeting and they made a vote while she was out at lunch. So Comcast Cable definitely has no comms and has already shown in our experience that they're willing to prevent information from being, that would support freedom of speech because it's about money. So I just wanted to point that out. Each channel is worth millions. One solution that I might present to you is the consideration of possibly if selling like maybe a couple of channels for those millions of dollars and then putting that money back into the existing channels. So maybe selling 2 channels and keeping 7. 7's a lucky number, right? So that is one idea. If the city doesn't have the money, that is one idea. However, that bandwidth, and freedom of speech, I really do support what Laura said about that. So, that is something that does need to be considered too. Let me see. Okay, so today I did talk to Alan Armijo, and he did, he explained the process to me. I'll put this over here, I guess you can see it. All right, so I did do an RFA, and I understand that we cannot communicate with them. So I have not made any effort to communicate with the ad hoc members who happen to be John K. Zabin, Paul Chapman, Diego Lucero, Patsy Arpino, Alicia Manzano, Shelly Sanchez, and Dee Feldman. I have made no attempts to communicate with them, but you were wondering, and those are the people 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I made the RFA during the RFP process, and it was responded, and it does say that the city considers this information to be confidential and that we can't communicate with them. So I haven't done that, but you were wondering, and those are the people, and those are the numbers. And I think we should go through the process that Jane suggested for doing that. There's more, but I'm kind of, I don't know why I get all nervous up here. The diversity in channels, I really support that idea of diversity in channels and multiple management for the 9 channels. I support what Adam said about increased funding, and I think I stated that last time. So I'm glad this discussion is up. I think the mayor should consider that. And the city of Albuquerque is a $1 billion entity,
So maybe there is additional money to help with this in support of freedom of speech. I think, you know, he has been very, what's the word? I don't know, the people who he has hired, like Hakeem Bellamy in cultural affairs, Carlos Contreras, who's a poet. I was a member of the Albuquerque National Poetry Slam, and we performed at the Nationals. The following year, we won the National Albuquerque Slam here in Albuquerque. But I was on the Albuquerque Poetry Slam team, and I performed, and Carlos was on the team with me, Carlos Contreras. So I know that the mayor does support freedom of speech. And Hakeem Bellamy, who is a poet and who was also formerly a board member, that he is also supportive of freedom of speech. And so from the people that the mayor has placed, I understand that he's in support of freedom of speech. So if this is framed to him correctly, the mayor might consider, hey, you know, maybe we can find monies from elsewhere to allocate to increase that, you know, increase the space or increase the funding, you know, because freedom of speech is very important, and our city is very diverse, and it would be wonderful to have that, you know, to have the diversity in all those different channels. So I think that's what I wanted to say about that. I believe that's about all I have to say, and so thank you for listening.
Thank you, Colleen. Thank you, Colleen. Okay, the rest of you have said no to any public comment, so that will end our public comment time. Moving on to 7, the August meeting, and I don't remember what the date for that was. Do you?
I checked in my notes and I have August 7th. Actually, it's also in the resolution because
That's right.
of some issue, right?
Right.
We moved it
Right.
earlier, August 7th.
Okay, thank you. So our normal meeting will be August 7th, and in whatever room we get, at 5:30. We have a special meeting this coming Monday to go over the drafted resolution for our paid channel multiple growth or multiple award, and we may be able to discuss more of the agenda items on Monday for the following regular meeting in August. So with that, I move that this meeting be adjourned. It's been seconded. All in favor say aye. This meeting is now